It's been 111 years since the tragic sinking of Titanic. The only thing most people know about Titanic is that there was a blockbuster film and the famous line,
"It's gonna hit! Women and children into the boat, sir!"
But there's so much deep history that goes into the voyage and sinking of the luxury cruise liner. Titanic was built in Belfast, Northern Ireland. And started construction on the 31st of March 1909 with its sister ship Olympic. Titanic was built by Wright Star Line, which at the time was owned by Bruce Ismay, son of Thomas Ismay. His father stopped the company from going bankrupt and opened the famous Liverpool and New York route, which would become a staple in travel history. Titanic was built by Harland and Wolff, and the chief engineer and designer of Titanic was Thomas Andrews, who had many years of experience building military ships, but this was his first time making two of the biggest cruise liners on the ocean. Titanic was funded by JP Morgan, was supposed to travel on Titanic on its maiden voyage, but cancelled last minute. He would have stayed on the B deck in suite 52 to 56, which was the only room on board Titanic to have their own promenade private deck. But Titanic had faced many problems in the 3 years of construction. First of all, Titanic's sister ship Olympic crashed on its 5th voyage in September 1911, with colliding with military ship HMS Hawke that damaged Olympic's hull and one of Olympic's rudder. For Olympic being too big, and Hawke couldn't see ship as it was dubbed the Gigantic, and it was rushed back to Belfast for immediate repair. When it returned to Belfast, they had to split up the workforce, and half had to work on repairing Olympic and the other half stayed on finishing construction on Titanic. Olympic had to borrow a rudder/engine from Titanic. On the day of launch, thousands of people paid to come and watch the launch and to see the ship for the first time. Also, Titanic wasn't like any regular ship. It wasn't christened with champagne like most. During that period, all across the UK, there were coal strikes for better pay. This, of course, affected Wright Star Line and delayed Titanic from being completed, which ultimately costed the company lots of money. The Titanic had to resort to using cold rivets opposed to hot rivets. This was to reduce the cost of production. Titanic was launched on the 31st of May 1911, a year before its first voyage, and went on a lot of test runs, but was still affected by the coal strike, which lasted until the 6th of April 1912. That was a week before sailing from Southampton, which impacted coal suppliers. They had to borrow coal from its sister ship Olympic. Here is the connection Titanic had to Liverpool.
I'm one of the role-play demonstrators at the Maritime Museum. Well, there was a link because in Liverpool there was a gentleman called Gustav Schwab, and he was a German financier. Now, he turned around and said that he would lend the Ismay family the money to create these ships as long as he got it built at his nephew's shipyard. And his nephew was Gustav Wolff, hence Harland and Wolff. Many links with Liverpool. The bell was cast here, actually not too far from where I live itself. The band were actually put through by an agency, and that was in Blacks and Castle Street. Yeah. A substantial member of the crew came from here, not all of them of course, but a lot of them did. The crockery that was used on board, actually came through Stoniers, which was a shop was in Liverpool right up to the 1970s, even though it was built down south, made down south, should say. Captain Smith had a residency up here. Bruce Ismay, he had a house in Mossley Hill, that way. So there's so many links with Liverpool. If you can imagine that the White Star Line history is, say, about a metre long, a yard long, then the part of the Titanic is only about half an inch, say about a centimetre, because Titanic really is only one small part of the White Star Line story.
Captain Edward Smith, who was known as the captain that only rich people wanted to travel with, he was both the captain of Olympic and Titanic on their maiden voyages. He was born in 1850 in Harnley, Stoke-on-Trent, and his connections to Warrington and Liverpool is that he got married to Sarah Eleanor Pennington, who was born in Newton Llewellows, and married Captain Edward Smith at St Oswald's Church in Winwick, with family lineage associated with Newton Llewellows, Warrington and Merseyside. A question people always wanted to know is what life on board Titanic, the world's luxurious ship, was like. We know it was documented to be luxurious with 3 classes, first, second and third class. There was also only one documented black family. The family was called the Lesemere Laroche. Mr. Joseph Lesemere Laroche was an engineer who joined Titanic at Chesbrough, France, in second class, which was bought by his mother. Had an engineering job in Paris where he met his wife. The plans for Joseph was to return to his birth country of Haiti, where he was planning to start working on higher paid engineering work. Life on board was different for someone like Sir John Jacob Astor. Boarded the ship at Chesbrough with wife. They were returning to the States after being on holiday in Cairo, Egypt, and decided to travel on Titanic. He was the world's richest man at the time and was staying in suite 62 to 64. First class passengers were treated to 10-course dinner with many on-board facilities including swimming pool, sauna, Turkish bath, on-board gym, church, private live cigar, private lounge and on-board restaurant. Titanic was stated to be heading towards the iceberg at a top speed at the time of 23 knots, which is 26.4 miles per hour, even though Captain Smith had iceberg warnings that it will be icy. By 11 p.m. on the 14th of April 1912, Titanic was speeding towards the iceberg when the iceberg was spotted by both lookouts Frederick Fleet and Reginald Lee, and they were both frightened and were in shock when they called the wheelhouse, where James Paul Moody answered and asked them what is the problem. These famous words came out of the mouth of Frederick.
Thank you.
In the rush of David Blair, second officer of Titanic, was transferring from Titanic to Olympic in Southampton, as they had to reshuffle the crew last minute, and he took with him the keys to the binoculars and stored the binoculars in his cabin. Charles Lightroller replaced David Blair as second officer, as he was unaware of this when he took over. And Frederick Fleet mentioned to the American Inquiry that they were unable to find them. Thomas Andrews rushed down on the night to the engine room and coal bunker to see the damage, but instead was greeted to heavy rising water that was flooding the ship, where he came to the conclusion and it only had a matter of 2 hours at max. What did you think the fire played in the sinking?
Very, very little, because it was completely away from the par. Harland and Woolf even to this day said that any 4 compartments could be flooded. 6 were flooded, but where the fire was another 3 compartments away from that. Mr. Andrews actually stated that the ship had gone before the part where the fire was. The fire's not unusual on board the ship, nothing at all. But to my personal opinion, the fire had nothing to do with the sinking of the ship.
Titanic sunk at 2:20 in the morning on the 15th of April 1912, and only 705 passengers survived the sinking. 1,503 passengers didn't make it.